Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of From Beijing With Love, a Hong Kong comedy action flick from 1994 that stars Stephen Chow and Anita Yuen. And as you can tell from the title alone, this is a spoof of the James Bond franchise. So the film begins in a warehouse with a bunch of dudes who open a trailer and see that a giant dinosaur skull is missing. We then cut to a group of guys who have the skull, but they are attacked by a special agent who fails in his task. Now after that event, a government agency hires Stephen Chow, who's currently working as a pork vendor, to retrieve the skull. He's a former agent. When he arrives in Hong Kong, he meets another agent, played by Anita Yuen, who proposes to help him. However, she is actually attempting to kill him. So that's all you need to know in terms of the plotting. Things just go from there. Now, in addition to starring in From Beijing With Love, Chow also directed and co-wrote the film. Now, this is primarily a comedy, and I've always enjoyed Chow's style of humor. Very frequently, his characters do not react the way a normal person would in real life. In some cases, he's rather obtuse and does not understand the gravity of the situation he's in, which, definitely leads to some laughs. There's a scene in this movie, which I will not spoil, that involves multiple assassination attempts in an apartment, and our protagonist is completely oblivious to what's going on. It's a fantastic scene, could be my favorite sequence, but the whole movie, in my opinion, is pretty funny. Actually, the first time I saw From Beijing With Love, I immediately formed a crush on Anita Yuen. Sure, she's beautiful and everything, but it was her incredibly charming performance that won me over. Her character is somewhat bloodthirsty. She has like a bloodlust, and that gives her the opportunity to use some really amusing mannerisms to express her psychotic mentality. And she's a little loony up there. The way she looks at Chow makes me laugh in and of itself. She's great in this movie, very good comedic timing, and she actually steals the show at times. So overall, really, I think the humor worked really well in From Beijing With Love, and the pairing of Chow and Yuen is a big reason why. Now, the action is of a good quality as well. There's a fun shootout early on, a fun confrontation scene near the end, and there are moments here and there that are genuinely surprising. But that leads to one of the more common criticisms that are aimed at this movie, that the violence is more intense than a typical comedy, perhaps too intense, which creates a few sharp tonal shifts. Now, if you're familiar with this YouTube channel, you should know by now that I am a big fan of tonal shifts in films in general, as long as both tones are executed well. And in the case of From Beijing With Love, it's the tonal shifts that help to distinguish it from other James Bond spoofs. I think one of the reasons why this film is memorable is the fact that it contributes some scenes that are totally unexpected. There's one particular sequence that is, criticized the most. I will not tell you what it is, because, this is a non-spoiler review, of course. What I will say is that the event itself really has nothing to do with the main conflict, and the violence is a bit disturbing. Maybe they go a little bit too far with the violence, which makes it feel perhaps a bit out of place for some viewers, which is fair enough. But I actually really enjoy that scene because, number one, it's unexpected. And number two, it reveals a big twist and actually introduces an important characteristic of our main protagonist. So, I think it gives us a surprise and serves a purpose at the same time. And I want to make this point clear as well. Just because this is a James Bond spoof does not mean that it's automatically going to be like a lazy throwaway film. On the contrary, it has a distinct Hong Kong cinematic style that reflects the era from which it was made, and that makes it very distinguishable and memorable, in my opinion. There's also a little bit of social commentary, I guess you could call it, because this seems to take some shots at mainland China. At least that's the impression I got while watching it. Now, in terms of flaws, there is one that kind of sticks out. If you try to make logic out of the villain motivations, it might get a little bit confusing at times. There were points in the film where I was asking myself, wait a second, why are these people trying to kill Chow again? and why did they ask him to do this or that? You know what I mean? It might get a little distracting at times, but it's not a big problem. Also, I've read that the original dialogue is difficult to translate into English. I've read that on many reviews, actually. So international viewers may miss out on some of that nuance in terms of the verbal comedy, I guess. But regardless of that possible limitation, I thought this film was fantastic and funny from start to finish. From Beijing With Love is highly entertaining stuff that chugs along at a blistering pace from start to finish, and it's only 83 minutes long, flies right by. It's currently available on Amazon Streaming in the United States. That's the English dubbed version. The original Cantonese language version is available on DVD in the United States. And I bet you there's a few Region 3 DVDs floating around out there too if you look for them. But before I leave you, there's an unrelated but interesting side note that I wanted to bring up regarding dinosaur skulls. Back in March 2007, superstar actor Nicolas Cage attended a gallery auction in Beverly Hills where he outbid Leonardo DiCaprio for an item by paying $276,000 for it. What was that item? A dinosaur skull. But that's not all. In 2015, it was discovered that the skull was actually stolen property from the country of Mongolia. So after hearing about this, good old Nick Cage decided to return the skull to its rightful owners. You know, he didn't do anything wrong. He might have just overpaid for a dinosaur skull, but he decided to give it back, which is nice. You know, that's a true story, an unbelievable true story. Maybe Hollywood should remake From Beijing With Love and cast Nicolas Cage as he attempts to return a dinosaur skull back to Mongolia. I would watch that. I would. And as always, we'll see you next time.